News Live. Now, 2 weeks ago on Moth News, we spoke to solicitor Caoimhe Haughey about her client, Caitlin Hassan, and the extraordinary struggle families face when trying to get answers or accountability from the state after harm occurs in care settings. That conversation highlighted how the system can leave families feeling powerless, ignored, and abandoned. Today, we're continuing that important discussion by shining a light on the experience of families navigating the nursing home and care sector itself. I'm joined by Majella Beattie, the founder of Care Champions, a family led advocacy group supporting over 10,000 families of residents in care homes and nursing homes in Ireland. Majella, you and your group have been at the coalface of this issue, trying to get answers, justice, and change. So I thank you for joining us. I'm sure you've lots to be doing. Better bring Majella in, I suppose. Hi, Majella. Welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Keith. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's really good to talk to you, especially after we spoke to Caoimhe Haughey about Caitlin and, the difficulty she's having, just trying to, get access to information, trying to get justice. We spoke about it. We'll get into it, but we did speak about it just there before we started recording about the if people only knew how much money our government are putting into defending institutions instead of caring for people, I think they would be outraged. Anyway, look, to set the scene for our audience today, can you tell us a little bit about Care Champions and also what brought you personally to this work?
Okay, so Care Champions is a voluntary, family-led grassroots group. Care Champions actually started just before the pandemic because at that time the HSE had an embargo on home care, and that was hugely affecting people. Some people found themselves nearly being pressured to go into full-time care because they couldn't get a basic home care package. At that time, I worked in the disability sector, and both my parents needed a lot of care. My father had a lot of medical issues. My mother had dementia, and she had very poor mobility. So I ended up having to give up work to care for my parents. And due to the complexity of their needs, I was getting no sleep. It was really difficult. I was getting no breaks. I was paying somebody to sit with mommy if I was in hospital with daddy. And I ranted on Facebook one day, and that's how Care Champions started. So very quickly, following that, setting up that group, the pandemic happened. So in some ways, the group was, we had the perfect little formation of a group at very early in the pandemic, because we've been talking to families who would be impacted before they were impacted, if that makes sense. So initially we welcomed the guidance, because it was meant to be a lockdown for 2 weeks on the 6th of March 2020. Nursing Homes Ireland, in advance of the government, made the decision to close down nursing homes and care settings to protect people, and it was meant to be for 2 weeks. We welcomed that short period of time. However, it went on, and sadly, then we started to have issues around window visits, and families were starting to raise concerns. At that time, our group was primarily supporting older people, and then we were finding that we were receiving calls from people having issues, be it in hospitals or in residential care facilities for people with intellectual disabilities. So we've never turned anybody away. So we're kind of a mixed match of families. And I suppose when the deaths started to occur in wave one, it really had, it was dreadful. It was really a travesty. And it was something that, it was so horrific, the way families and people were treated. We very quickly started to contact the government. We were like, stop, you need to stop, we're doing this wrong. There's serious issues here. We weren't listened to. And as our family members started to die, we came together very quickly because we didn't want other families to experience the same trauma that our loved ones had. So we had linked in very early on with groups like Age Action, the Irish Association of Social Workers, who had also contacted the government, and We're highlighting the concerns and the risks to people behind closed doors. We went into a pandemic with a huge outstanding level of safeguarding concerns that had not been addressed due to the shortage, I suppose, of social workers and the shortage of safeguarding teams. So we locked people down, and so we took away. Of course, you have to remember in 2020, HIQA did not do in-person inspections for months on end. So we removed the regulator. We removed the eyes of the family, who was also a safeguarding eye, from care facilities, and we locked them down without any thought given to the residents, to their rights. What we done, we ended up having a system, I suppose, that was like we had a medical model approach where we saw an illness, we saw an age, we saw a disability. We didn't see individuals with human rights and rights to family life and rights not to remain in their room for weeks or months on end, or rights not to see their loved ones for the weeks and months leading to their deaths. So we removed all that from them. We also then decided to remove people from hospitals to nursing homes without any testing, which obviously spread the virus. Now, you also have to, I suppose very briefly, the experience of residents, we'll say, in nursing homes at that point was you had staff going out sick. So they were running on a very low staff. And the direct consequence of that was if there was only one staff instead of 10 staff, people were not getting turned, people were not getting washed, people were not getting fed, people were not getting their basic needs met. So we had families where they were trying to make contact. They were being denied window visits. So the state's response consistently was to issue guidance. And the guidance was quite similar all along. Guidance didn't work. We needed some sort of rules or legislation to say that residents had a right to see their loved ones. You know, we had families, if they were lucky to get to a window to watch their loved one die and nobody coming in to attend to them, standing maybe in the rain, and we weren't allowed in. But yet our residents didn't come out to get COVID. You know, we have husbands and wives who were 50 and 60 years married who were denied the right to see their wife or their husband for 6-7 months, however long it was, in the lead up to their death. And we don't know. And I suppose something our families say quite often is, how did my mother, father, husband or wife, did they know that we loved them? Did they think that we had abandoned them? And these are thoughts that are going through their heads all the time. And of course, other countries and other jurisdictions, they brought in what we call care partner. Well, we call it care partner because it's care partner in Northern Ireland. And there's different names in other countries. So basically, care partner was brought in because governments were seeing the direct negative impact on people to be separated from their families. And now, on the flip side of that, in residential services and disability services, those services stopped. So people started to regress. So people who needed that routine, you know, people with autism and various different syndromes need very specific and regular routines. So that was all stripped from them. So there's an awful lot of similarities between the nursing home and residential services. So at the same time, as we started because we connected with the people in Northern Ireland, we were begging for like a care partner type system. So November 2020 in Northern Ireland, they had care partners in place so that nobody in care, in a residential service, nursing home or hospital, they would always have a right to one family member. So that family member would be trained up in infection control, take the same precautions as staff, and they were allowed to go in to be with that person, whether or not the virus was there or not. They were there to support the person, provide emotional connection. It was taking pressure off staff if there wasn't enough staff. And it ensured that there was, I suppose, the additional safeguarding eyes. We didn't get that. And we are supporting families. We gave a talk in Leinster House 2 weeks ago, I think. And one of our speakers that we brought with us that day, her mother died in January 2025, and she was not allowed in because there was a flu virus. So in 2025, despite the government saying that we have learned lessons, we are locking people out. We are allowing people to die on their own, and in the days leading to their deaths, to be denied the people that they love. So, so the care partner is something that's very badly needed. So, while, you know, in 2020, the Irish government signed a UN policy document which stated that they were aware of the concerns of locking people down. So this, I actually have the quote in front of me from that document. Sorry, I thought I had that quote in front of me.
Sorry, take your time. Take your time.
I have it.
Just as, have you got it?
Yeah. Yeah. So in 2020, Ireland signed a UN policy brief which stated, "We are deeply concerned about the distressing reports indicating incidents of neglect and deeply concerned about the distressing reports indicating incidents of neglect and mistreatment, as well as high rates of mortality due to COVID-19, which are affecting older people living in nursing homes and those in care institutions. The UN called on countries to introduce additional safeguarding measures to combat increased risk. In Ireland, no such measures were introduced, and in fact, the basic adult safeguarding teams that we had was often redeployed. So I suppose I could kind of go on a long time about the experiences, you know, at that time. But if I was to maybe move into safeguarding, so our families, as the pandemic went on, were raising more serious concerns. So we would have families who would come forward with concerns around abuse or neglect, or, you know, it could be simple things where their loved one would come to a window and they'd notice they'd lost a lot of weight, or they didn't have their teeth in, or they had somebody else's clothes on, to seeing bruising or injury, or they'd been told by their loved one that they'd experienced sexual harm. So when these things started to occur, we automatically went to what we thought was the complaint system that should be there. So what we found was that HICWA doesn't deal with individual concerns. Then we went to the Office of the Confidential Recipient. So that's your service, your say, and they only deal with HSE complaints. We went to the adult safeguarding teams, but they don't have a legal right of entry into a private facility. So we would ring the safeguarding, like social workers are the lead experts in investigating safeguarding concerns. So we would ring them and say, this has happened, or I'm concerned about this. And they would say, unfortunately, I'll have to ring and ask permission, and they have a right to refuse me entry. So we were getting nowhere. So when things went wrong, there was absolutely nowhere to go. So, and unfortunately, that remains the same. There is no fit for purpose complaint system. So when we found that we had individuals coming forward for somebody had experienced sexual abuse, and when it would come to going to the guards, for example, we found that the guards lacked communication skills to support a person who was nonverbal or had a cognitive disability, or somebody who had a reason that they weren't able to give their statement clearly. They didn't have the skills or the communication supports to support that person to be able to report that abuse. And that leads to the fact that less than 5% of people with intellectual disabilities ever been able to get criminal justice for the assault that they've experienced or the harm that they've experienced. I
have so many questions. So many questions. Who's in charge of the care? Who is in charge of the oversight of care homes?
Okay, so HICWA is a regulatory body. So what we have found is that
I know you said this already, but so HICWA can only
they talk to policy, and
policy,
in many HICWA reports, I would challenge that oftentimes you will see abuse and neglect, and it's dressed up as poor quality care, where it is in fact abuse or neglect. So that's HICWA's role, and the HICWA does not inform families. If HICWA goes into a facility and they find something very concerning and dreadfully wrong, families are not informed. They don't hear it until months later when that report is actually published. And I also have a huge issue with the fact that a care facility can bring HICWA to court to try and prevent the publication of that report. And they have been successful. Every year there's a few reports that will never be published because the facility has brought a case against HICWA. So all we are then left with is, where else do you go? You go to the minister. And then where do you get with the minister? The minister will tell you, well, in regards to private facilities, they're a private business, we're not responsible. Who is?
Well, yeah, but these are people that are placed in care, and funded by the government, and we, the taxpayer, are paying for the money that goes to these care homes, so that we, the taxpayer, should have oversight of these care homes, because it's our money, it's tax money, it's government's money. It's not like a mansion on the hill with like wicker chairs outside where wealthy old people go to die, full of Hollywood actors and people out playing chess. We're talking about people who need care, the old, infirm, people with disability. This is a vital part of who we are as a society, and we're handing it over, and we have no oversight over it. And if there's a complaint, it very often doesn't. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. When you were talking about COVID, something was very clear to me, right? Which is an absolute, for this country, what we did was we made a decision. We made a decision in COVID. We decided who we were going to save and who we were going to let die. So did we make a choice on, we're going to save supposedly healthy younger people who don't have any disabilities, don't need any care, are self-sufficient, or supposedly don't have any major mental health issues or hidden disabilities? We made a choice to let, like, I suppose it's only dawning on me now what we did. Like, that is really serious what we did. And like, I don't think so. Also, it's suspicious to me, right? So if they're not letting people's parents come in, or people's children come in to turn their mother, or spend a bit of time with them because there isn't enough staff in the care home, if they're not letting people in, and if they're cancelling appointments and they're cancelling window visits, and what's going on inside? What are they trying to hide that they won't let the public in? Why aren't they being transparent? We should demand transparency. So two things here. Our government, our country, made a decision to let old people and people who needed extra care to die. They made a choice to save a section of society, those with money and those who are healthy. And that, to me, is, it seems so stark now what we did. And that's something we need to address, because that's an abomination. A country is only, as good as, how it treats the weakest. I don't know what the quote is. And this is so obvious to me now, what's happened here. And now, instead of facing it and allowing these families to speak and allowing them to have the information and let the whole thing come out, we're doubling down and we're spending money fighting people who are looking for justice. It's absolutely disgusting. The way you laid it out there. Yeah.
And it went on wave after wave. This was not just wave one, where people were denied medical care and basic dignity in their deaths. The very failures that we experienced in wave one, we experienced in wave 2, 3, and 4, despite the fact that organisations like ISAW and Age Action, ourselves, making submissions to government on telling them what was happening, and they just continue to do the same thing. Like, we didn't have a human rights expert telling government, you're doing wrong here. And we allowed people to die in circumstances where if a family member did manage to get somebody to pick up a phone in a nursing home, phones often went unanswered. Like we have a family where a husband was told, "Oh, your wife is great. She walked down the corridor today," and this lady hadn't walked for years. You know, we've a family where who managed to get records where their mother was given morphine 12 hours after she died. Like, there's serious questions, and yet private facilities are not. They don't have to give out records under freedom of information, so we don't get them. So we've got families who do not know, did anybody see their loved one in the days and weeks leading to their death? Did anybody turn them? Did they see a doctor? Were they in pain? We don't know that. So we've got people in our group who are fighting, who are frozen just in that moment, needing to know these weren't just old people, or they weren't just people with disabilities. These were loved members of families. They were people who were part of the communities who made our country what it is, in fairness, you know. And this is how we treated them. And when we go and try and get acknowledgement, you know, what we will hear from this Taoiseach and the previous Taoiseach is words like, "We're on a witch hunt." We have never gone anywhere, only very respectfully, to government to ask them to please meet with us. You need to see how your policies failed us, so this will never happen again. And you must acknowledge what happened to our loved ones. And we want to know what happened. We want to know who was there. You know, we want to know why these policies and decisions were made that had such a heinous impact on so many people's lives, and why we're not stopping right now to make sure that we never do this again. You know, we have a huge opportunity. Our loved ones can't come back. People who are sexually harmed, that cannot be undone. What we need to do is acknowledge it, own it, and say, okay, how can we totally reform this broken system that was already broken before COVID? COVID only shone a spotlight on it. How can we now do right? How can we make sure that people are receiving high quality, safe care and dignified care? And that should be the only question. And, you know, for us as families, we all we can do is keep fighting, and fight we will, because people who we lost were so precious and they deserved so much more than what they got. And, you know, it's really heartbreaking when in 2025 that we have families coming to us with the same concerns and issues that we were raising in 2020, and yet government will talk about lessons been learned, and then they will offer eventually, after promising a full COVID inquiry, it was watered down to a mere evaluation with no statutory powers. So we met with Professor Scott, who is overseeing the evaluation. Lovely lady, and certainly somebody who has the very best of intentions in her work. But our work is her terms of references are so limited, and there's nothing she can achieve in it. And in fact, the initial part of her work will be just a survey where anybody could say what they experienced. And then she's a bigger module, which is for failures in care, but it's only for nursing homes. So if you were failed in a hospital, or you were harmed in a disability service, or your child regressed so much from not having a day service for 2 or 3 years, or you were denied home care, they can't even look at that. So she hopes that she will be able to request documentation, but in reality, she's not going to get it. You know, we can't. We had one meeting when Minister Butler was Minister for Older Persons, and after one of our prime time, where we had done a lot of research and found a lot of failures from our own research, and we had a couple of prime times, and after one of them, and because of media pressure, Minister Butler met with us. It was the only meeting, and it was only as a consequence of media pressure. So we we brought people representing the whole country, and we brought whistleblowers with us. And she basically told us there's nothing she could do, that she didn't have any power, that she would have to go back to the senior ministers. And we were like, well, we'll meet with them. Well, no, they'll only send you back to me. But what she did do was she had HICWA do an investigation on the 3 homes that was mentioned in the report that week. So there was 3 nursing homes from each wave, one from each wave. And we were trying to get a copy of this report. She had promised counselling, which never happened. But she said that HICWA was doing this report. So we fought to try and get access to this report, and we couldn't get it. And eventually we got it. And I'll just show you a page from it if I can here. And so the minister got this report. Now, we later, because of this report, made us go further. That's an example of what families got about how their loved ones died.
Oh, so what's the redacted stuff then?
So we went and we actually did a lot of research into 1 or 2 of the facilities, these facilities, and the failure was horrific. We found that in one particular home, 9 people had died and their deaths wasn't reported. There was no staff, where people were left with nobody. There was no staff. Where people were mixed up. They didn't know who was who. They didn't know who had COVID, who didn't. These are human beings with human rights. They're not. And that's how we treated them. So when our minister and HICWA and everybody else knew those failures, that's what they gave us. Instead of trying to say, we need to bring you in here, this is what we found. We're really sorry that this happened. This is what we're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And this is what we're going to do for the affected families to honour those people who were so poorly treated. They tried to hide it from us. And then they expect us to think that an evaluation will be acceptable. So for us, we feel that there needs to be a fit for purpose, statutory inquiry that will investigate. We need to know on what grounds were decisions made. We all know at the very beginning of the pandemic that mistakes would have been made, and it was a bit of a mess. We were trying to find our way. Still more should and could have been done, but we can accept, that we were finding our feet, even though there was people in place, experts in place from January. It didn't hit us until March, supposedly watching it and preparing, but we didn't. We just completely stripped older people and people with disabilities of their rights. People who needed home care home, their carers are pulled from them in many cases, and people were just left to fend for themselves. When oxygen was needed in nursing homes, it was pulled for hospitals. When testing was needed, it was pulled. There was so many failures that need to be investigated to ensure that we never do this again. And no Taoiseach has met us, no Taoiseach has met us, no minister has.
Who was it that said about you that you're on a witch hunt?
The Taoiseach, Micheál Martin and Simon Harris, Leo Varadkar before him, and Roger O'Gorman, they've all used the word witch hunt every time a TD brings it up in the Dáil. And we've actually written to Taoiseach.
What's the witch hunt? That they're after the Taoiseach, the minister?
No, I think what he's saying is that we're trying to lawyer up and make it into a big. If to listen to us, all we're looking at is making it into a big money thing for lawyers. And the word witch hunt.
But hang on, they're spending a lot of money on lawyers. Like if you look at everything in that report that you just showed me, I guarantee you there was solicitors, lawyers looking at that report, paid a lot of money. You look at those redacted bits. There's like the only witch hunt here is like if anybody's money thirsty or is the government, because they're the ones spending money on legal teams to keep this information quiet and keep it away from the families. That's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah. But you need to realise at the end of the day, the Taoiseach can't bring our loved ones back from the dead. He can't undo harm. So there's no reason for him not to sit around a table and talk to us and hear our stories. Like, we have family members in our group who died trying to get answers, who died not knowing how their wife or husband lived or died.
And this is the article in the newspaper during the week by what's his name, Malloy, and he talked about the 3Ds: delay, deny,
deflect,
whatever, deflect. And this is every government institution who has messed up and consistently messes up. This is the tactic they use. And I have my own experience with working for RTE, and I'm trying to get money that they owe me, and it's the same thing. This is a tactic that every department and every institution funded by the government uses. They're spending so much money on lawyers and legal teams, so much. I mean, that really is the investigation as to how much, because who are they getting the advice from?
Mm-hmm.
A legal team? A lawyer? Why is there nobody in there? They need humanitarians in there, advising them to sit down with the families, see what the problems were, let the families have their day, let them tell you what happened, and then see what you can do and give people what you can give them, but then make sure it doesn't happen again. That's a much, much simpler than this protecting institutions at all costs. That is it. We've tried it. We've done it. It doesn't work.
No.
You'll eventually look at Stardust. You will eventually have to come forward and apologize. You've done it before. You'll have to do it again. So face the facts. This does not work. Someone's giving you bad advice, probably your legal team. Ignore it. Get some humanitarians in, and let's stop doing this over and over again and making people suffer. The people who've already suffered, we're just going to make them suffer again. And what we're going to spend money on? Oh yeah, legal teams.
Yeah, 100%. And it's it's shocking. And unfortunately, while we will discuss this, and we continue to, in 6 months' time, I'm sure I'll be sitting in front of somebody else doing an interview. How many more people will be failed in those 6 months? And how many more people will be failed? We all hope to get old. We all could be any of us could have a disability tomorrow. Anything can happen, car accident, anything can happen that can change your life overnight. And this is certainly not a care system that I would like to receive care in. The difference, I think that government just don't want this on their record. They want the next government to deal with, well, hopefully a new government, and that will have to address it.
But this is not like, nobody's going to look at this and say, oh, this is Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, this is their reputation, because they're admitting they're being transparent. They're telling everybody what happened. People would look at that and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's amazing that they're human enough, vulnerable enough, honest enough to go, yeah, that was really bad. And the first thing they should have done after the waves finished and we finished locking people down, and they still, I mean, I'm sure there's some people who don't know that COVID is over. The first thing they should have done was to speak to the families and say what's going on, and like get somebody who can go into a nursing home and can do a report and can find out what happened. And this is not about, it's not a witch hunt after the staff either, because they were in an absolute impossible situation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I could say to you, and the question was on the tip of my tongue. Well, I suppose you have to understand, like, it was an unusual situation, and the government, they had their backs to the wall, and mistakes were made. I wouldn't even bother asking that question, because yes, of course, yeah, everybody knows that. Nothing. They messed up. They definitely made a decision as to who was going to live and who was going to die. That's possibly discussed for another day. But they didn't, and still aren't, just letting. They're just still trying to bury it.
Yeah.
Like they buried the mother and baby homes. Like they tried to bury Stardust. Like there's so many moments in our history that we tried to bury things and it doesn't work. And we're not like that.
No. And
we as people, we're not like that. We're better than that. And actually, I feel like it's affecting us as a country. I feel like it's affecting who we are. It's affecting how we feel. It's affecting, like, even I don't want to get woo on. It's affecting the energy of our country, that we continue to do this and try and bury and bury and bury. Because I guarantee you, every single person in this country is now affected by something that the government have tried to bury. Absolutely. And deny and delay. And it's, when will they realize? It's idiotic.
Yeah.
It's actually idiotic. To me, now I'm looking at the government going, you guys are just really bad at running things. Because you get money from people called tax, and that money is supposed to be used to look after the people. And all you're doing is looking after yourselves.
Yeah. Squandering.
And it hasn't. And so you're telling me, even very recently, there was a flu outbreak and somebody didn't get into.
And like, nothing has changed. Like, there's still people, in fairness, there's still people dying with COVID. There's still people been impacted. But anytime there's any sort of like, we've had flu for thousands of years, and we managed to we never locked people in. We never prevented somebody from being with their family as they were dying because they had flu, or somebody else might have flu. So the guidance that was brought in during each of the waves of the pandemic was brought out by NPHET. So that basically, this is what you do if there's a risk of if there is an outbreak, or, but was left to each facility to interpret that to however they felt fit to suit their own facility, which was always for the staff, for the owners, and not the residents. And that is continuing. So that power that these facilities got at that time has never come back to the centre.
So one care home, a facility, can make a decision based on a flu outbreak that it's not like an email has gone out saying we need to shut down for the weekend. We just want to nip this in the bud. And if you were cynical, you might think that that's not the reason at all. If you were cynical, I'm not saying that they're not being genuine, but if you're not being transparent and you're not being open and you're not being clear as to what's going on, you're sort of bending the rules. Are you hiding something? Have you not got enough staff? Are you saying it's a flu thing when it's a manpower thing? So there's more. So it's more lies being heaped upon lies, and ultimately people are.
Yeah, I'm seeing in hospitals, like, they're shutting down consistently for flus, and we're not looking to say, okay,
what's the outcome? What's the outcome from, like, say, when they shut down because of the flu thing? Are people missing saying goodbye to their loved ones?
Absolutely. And you've got people in corridors in A&Es who may have dementia, or people with disability who need that familiar support, who are left there on their own. And then you're in an understaffed A&E, and you're lying on a trolley and you can't get out of the trolley and you need to go to the toilet. So instead of having the time to bring you to the toilet, you're put in a pad, or if you're lucky enough to get a pad, and there's such
have you heard examples of people with dementia on the trolley in waiting for of just soiling themselves?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And people with disabilities also, absolutely, yeah. And like, there's
and this is better for who? Because the staff have to deal with this. They have to look at this. They have to. And when I say look at this, I don't mean it's a term. What I mean is they have to look at and they have to become these people that pretend they don't care because there's nothing they can do. So they have to become heartless and cold, and that's what they have to become to do the job. So who is it benefiting?
We've supported over 200 staff throughout the pandemic, and most of them are whistleblowers. We supported them to make protected disclosures and trying to highlight concerns. Most of them will never ever work in care again. They were all penalised for trying to speak up.
So who penalised them, and what way were they penalised? If you could find an example.
Yeah, they'd either be let go, or they'd be given very unsocial hours. They'd be just making life really, really difficult for them.
Yeah, and this has happened before. This
or
happened before.
even,
We know a Caitlin who we spoke to, Caitlin's lawyer, and they decided to speak up, and they weren't able to get people on the phone. They weren't able to get access services. Coincidentally, obviously, but suddenly everything got really, really difficult for them to do the things that they needed to do. So this is another thing that we do as a country with we call them whistleblowers. People who are concerned about the place they work and how people are being treated. I think whistleblowers are great, and I champion a whistleblower, and I'm a whistleblower myself. But it's almost like whistleblowers to the rest of the public, to people looking at a newspaper article, to listen to us talk, and they're going whistleblower. No, these are concerned members of staff who are going, either I can't work under these conditions, or I can't keep looking at these people who are being treated this way, and I can't be part of it, and this needs to stop. And they're the ones that are penalized, not the owners, not the government minister, the person who calls it out. This is consistently Irish,
Yeah, and just there in that case that you referenced, like when your child or your loved one has experienced sexual harm, the way that you are treated is abhorrent. You are penalized. You are made to be like you're a lunatic. They break you down. They try to break you down, and it's funny because we've supported so many families where sexual abuse has occurred, no matter where it is, and it doesn't matter even if it's a state body or a private facility. The way in which families have been victimized is the same. It's turned back on them. I wasn't as bad as you thought, or no, we'll look at that internally now. Go away, stop annoying us. And even when some families tried to raise very serious concerns, they were threatened with eviction. And in fact, evictions did occur during the pandemic, only because families are raising very serious and genuine concerns.
So if a family raised a concern about where their family member was being supposedly taken care of in care, the family member was removed from care.
Yes.
As a result.
Yeah.
During the pandemic.
Yeah.
This is the thing that they could. This is the thing they definitely couldn't do.
Yeah. People were given 28-day discharge notices. It was just appalling. It was just really, really. It's frightening that you put your whole trust into a system, and to make a decision for your loved one to go into care is a very, very big decision, because nobody will ever love that person the way that you love them. Nobody will ever see your mother or your father or your son or your daughter in the eyes that you do, and the extra mile that you would go for them. So to make that decision, it's a really heartbreaking decision to make, and a really tough, challenging and expensive decision to make. And you're handing them over with trust. And then when you raise a genuine concern, the way that these people turn, it's like, if you can imagine an individual, they're trying to take on the power and the might of a very protected, well-off institution, which is impossible. They're broken.
Deep pockets, to pay for legal teams.
Yeah.
It's a real David and Goliath. But yeah, I mean, I just think that I know you're saying like people don't see, your parents someone will never look after your mother like you would, or whatever. You go the extra mile, all those little things, and you could have a place where the staff is great, but you need to see somebody, a familiar face. But also, what if it's you? Like, we think about our parents and we think about those who passed. We think about our brothers and our sisters and those, who need care. What if it was you in that position? What if it was one of us? What if it was me or you? If people could put themselves in that position, even, or even like you're a daughter or I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. But I just can't. I don't know how to get across to people that this country is not about. We seem to have more interest in keeping the bloody pubs open and we're having discussions about whether pubs are. Is there enough people going into pubs? Should the government be giving money to pubs to keep them? We are literally not looking after the people of this country. This is a class issue. Mm-hmm. It's classist. The old, the people who need care, people who are disabled, people who have less money, the lower socioeconomic. This is classist. But when I talk to you and when I talk to other people about other areas and other people, this is how we are being treated. Everybody in this country.
Yeah.
And it's like if you can't. Oh, well, that was an isolated incident. That's an isolated incident. The care home, that's isolated. All these isolated incidents, we've all been involved in one of these scandals, and none of us are joining the dots. And the sooner we join the dots, and all of these so-called whistleblowers, all of these, we all come together and say, no, this is everybody. This is how you treat your people. This is how we treat our people, because we're allowing it to happen. Yeah. That's the truth. That's why people talk about money. People talk about, we don't the jobs. People talk about working from home, not working from home. But no. None of that is the problem. The problem is how we are treating ourselves and the people around us. It's despicable, and it needs to change.
Absolutely. And just on that, has been an isolated incident or a period of time, or we were in a crisis. You look at now I'm going to try and be correct with my time frame. If you look back to the Grace case, which has been in the media a lot lately. So in 1996, Grace and those people the reason they were failed was because health and social care workers, they allowed it to continue. They did not do what they were meant to do to protect people. The HSE, when that went up to 2002, I think, people failed. People who were paid to look after people, they failed them. Without mandatory reporting, without safeguarding legislation, they failed them. Then you look at Brandon. People knew, health and social care workers knew that adults were being sexually assaulted in the Brandon case, and they allowed it to continue because they did not do the right thing. They did not speak up. In the Emily nursing home in 2021, during the pandemic, when it was locked down, women were saying that they'd been sexually harmed and they were not believed. And then when you had the social work team that came in there to try and investigate it, the HSE put their hand up to try and stop the investigation from going forward, which is why Bernard Gloucester later then had to bring somebody to go back and look at it. So this is not historic. This is not a one-off. We have a widespread pattern of failure to provide safe, quality, dignified care, and we do not have, if you are a child in care, there is, you are mandated to report. There is legislation. So it's a two-tier system. So if you are a health and social care worker and you're working in a children's service and an abuse or a harm occurs, you are legally accountable and responsible to report. If you're working with somebody over 18 and the very same thing happens, you're not legally obliged to report. There is no safeguarding legislation. You will not be held criminally liable. In all those cases I have mentioned, not one person has been held, has been legally accountable.
Held to account, yeah.
For all of those.
Not one person.
Not one person. And in all of those cases, when those people weren't believed, those people were living in an unsafe environment with no safe space, being ignored and being subjected to horror of being raped, assaulted, or whatever, and nobody done anything. So until we need to call it out. I think it's also really important to say there is some really great care in this country.
Of course.
People who have a poor experience, their voices must be heard, and their experiences must shape policy, and it must be heard. We want to sweep everything under the carpet. Well, we're not going to be swept under the carpet.
We don't have enough carpet left in the country.
Exactly.
But things are starting to, You know, you can put as many dead bodies in a storage facility, but it'll fill up. Like, you cannot hide this stuff. You cannot kick it down the road forever. And the best thing for us to do as a country is to deal with it and face it head on. This is what we need to do. This is what we just want. I mean, if somebody thinks that going on a march to say that somebody from Africa shouldn't live in this country, you are a useful idiot. I'm going to tell you, you're a useful idiot, because the government are going, yes, great. They think it's the immigrants' fault.
Yeah.
We don't have to fix anything. We'll keep denying. We'll keep delaying. You are helping the government to cause harm to your fellow citizens, the Irish people you care so much about, the women and children you care so much about, the wives, the daughters, whoever it is you scream that you're worried about from somebody moving over here from a different country.
Yeah. You're
an idiot. The government love you. They want you to do it all day long, because that means that they don't have to face the facts that they're absolutely abuse that's happening in this country to our own people.
Absolutely.
And that's the fact, isn't it? What do you think what could people do? What would you like to see people do, and what do you tell people to do?
Okay, so we always ask people to contact their TDs. We need to put pressure on. We need safeguarding legislation. We need mandatory reporting. We need it now. So at the moment, safeguarding legislation has been running around the House of the Oireachtas for years, and it's never been implemented. This present government has, in their terms of business for government, they have said they want a service-specific policy for safeguarding. Policies don't save people. They don't change culture. They didn't protect our loved ones, and they're not going to change or protect anybody in future. Law. We need law. People need to be protected by law to be safe, to be accountable, to have a right to their family, have a right to family life. They need staff need to be mandated to report. When something happens, there needs to be an independent safeguarding authority that's independent of government, independent of the HSE, needs to be run by social workers who are the expert lead in the field. And it needs to be a system whereby when concerns are raised, that they can be appropriately investigated. Along with that mandatory reporting, there needs to be a protection mechanism in place. The staff who raise concerns are not penalised and cannot be punished or demoted or let go or whatever for raising those concerns. It's all about culture change. We need a complete change in culture. We also need, for those families who are bereaved and those who are harmed, we should not have reports that will never see the light of day. Why, we know of the government or facilities paying thousands of euros to do a report on a specific incident. And those reports sit on a minister's desk and they never see the light of day. Why they were done and why that money was wasted, I don't know. Those reports should be made public. We need, for the families who are bereaved and the families who are harmed, they must, if they want it, they must be given their loved ones' records, and they must be told the truth, no matter how bad it was, because no matter how bad it actually was, it's no worse than what's going around in our heads, because we know the harm that some people experienced. So we're thinking, okay, well, my mother was totally vulnerable, so that might have happened to her too. So no matter how bad it is, people need to know. You can deal with the truth no matter how bad it is. That has to happen, because we've got thousands of families across this country who are broken. And as a consequence, we've had marriage breakups, we have people's health impacted. Like the total...
we bang on about mental health in this country, and the government are the chief cause, the main cause of mental health issues in this country. And until they accept that and do something about it, we might as well, like the walking in the dark. You can walk in the dark every night, like dusk till dawn, whatever. Like you could do that till the cows come home. Absolutely. But the government, the people running this country, are causing mental health issues in this country. They are the predominant creator of this problem. And these things, these little flags of these green flags of like, oh yeah, we're doing a walk, we're gonna meet at midnight, we're gonna walk till 6 o'clock. Absolutely brilliant. Knock your socks off. It will make not one jot of a difference. The money you raised, not one jot of a difference until, as you said, we need a culture change. We need to change as a country. We need to change what we're asking for of this government. Until that happens, I mean, like how much I'm sure you know how much a care home get. It doesn't even matter, but like I'm sure they get enough money that the government can say we need to be able to come in here whenever and have a look around, and if not, we're going to sanction you.
Yeah.
Simple as, hit them where it hurts. Why is that not happening? Seems like a very, very quick solution.
100%. Like there's an enormous amount of public funding that goes into nursing homes, without a doubt. But if you saw throughout the pandemic, they put in a system, it was called TAPS, TAPS, and it was an additional funding for nursing homes. So if there was an outbreak, at one point they were actually given an automatically 75,000, and then they were given so much per resident per month that the outbreak lasted. There was so much money, and that was meant to be to deal with the outbreak. Well, most certainly, when our loved ones came to the windows in somebody else's clothes and no teeth, or their teeth have gone missing, or with no glasses, or we don't see, and I do think, as part of a proper inquiry, we need to see where that money went to.
So the money was given to them, so because you'll need extra staff, you'll need to probably pay staff more. You'll need to spend. This money was not, in some cases, it appears this money was not spent.
Millions and millions that some care homes got. It's actually all out there. It's actually all there on the website. Like, it's colossal money that was given, and they were throwing money at an issue. They removed some of the safeguarding teams. They locked people in while knowing that we already had a safeguarding issue in this country. They removed families, the only safe eyes that was there. And they didn't listen. They didn't listen to all the voices. They signed this UN document saying, we know this is going on. You had that poor gentleman in Meath that had the maggots on his face, only that his wife managed to get in after his son dying. Nothing. Like, where is the accountability?
Ownership, accountability. Yeah. I mean, like, just put your hand up. As a minister, if you get into politics, have the balls or or whatever it is to put your hand up and go, like, no one's going to look at a minister and go, oh my God, look at how weak that man is, because he's putting his hand up and he's taking accountability and he's going to do something about it, actually going to do something about it. No one's going to think, I don't understand the mentality of it. Who are they protecting? What's being protected? It's not money, because they're spending money hand over fist. Why do they hate people? Why do the government hate the people that they're there to run the country for? It does not make sense. None of it.
No. And, if you go right back, why is the government funding private? They're pushing funding into private and outsourcing care. Why are they spending so much money on that when for less money we could have state-run quality care with appropriate oversight? Like, it doesn't make sense. And obviously, profit and care don't mix. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't mix. If you have a business, you're there to make money.
I would think that. I would imagine you could run a business well and make money. It's the problem is the greed, and they want more money. And if you look at any of these, I mean, a lot of the time in history, you look at things that were privatized, and you realize that actually they didn't need to be privatized, but it was somebody who wanted that as a business, and it turned out to be a friend of a friend, and then he's running the business, and then there's a board, and that's the shareholders. They all need to get money. Mm-hmm. Like, this is sinister.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense.
No.
Because if I could see that it was about saving money, you kind of go, if I could see that it was about saving traumatizing the nation if they only heard, no, that's not it. Like, it's sinister. So who are these people that are running care homes, that are running iPass facilities, that are getting all this money and are not accountable and can do whatever they want? That's weird. Because if I don't pay If I miss out on paying €20 of my tax, I will get that's very, very quickly dealt with.
Absolutely.
If I don't pay a parking fine, it's very quickly dealt with. But if I was running a home with elderly people or people and one of them died and I didn't really notice for a while, nothing.
Yeah.